The morning mist clung to the rocky terrain of Kepler 442b like a gray shroud, muffling the sounds of boots on stone as Corporal Jake Morrison moved through the alien landscape. His squad of 12 Marines spread out in a tactical formation, their weapons ready and senses sharp. This was supposed to be a routine reconnaissance patrol along the outer perimeter of human settlements, but Jake's instincts told him something was wrong. The planet's twin suns cast strange shadows through the perpetual fog, and the silence felt too complete. After 18 months fighting the Zelathi Empire, Jake had learned to trust his gut feelings. The aliens were masters of ambush tactics, using their natural camouflage and superior numbers to overwhelm human forces. But they had never faced anyone quite like Jake Morrison. Contact front. Sergeant Williams' voice crackled through the comm system just as the world exploded into chaos. Plasma bolts erupted from concealed positions, turning the morning mist into a deadly light show. The distinctive whine of Zelathi energy weapons filled the air as purple streaks of death cut through Jake's squad. 3 Marines dropped immediately, their armor smoking from direct hits. The remaining soldiers scrambled for cover behind the scattered boulders that dotted the landscape. Jake rolled behind a massive rock formation, his rifle already tracking targets. The Zelathi had planned this ambush perfectly, positioning themselves on 3 sides with overlapping fields of fire. Their reptilian forms moved with deadly grace through the mist, their scaled skin shifting colors to match the rocky terrain. Most human soldiers would panic facing such overwhelming odds, but Jake Morrison was not most soldiers. His first shot took down a Zelathi sniper positioned on a ledge 200 meters away. The alien's head snapped back as the armor-piercing round found its mark between the creature's compound eyes. Jake was already moving before the body hit the ground, sprinting to a new position as return fire chewed up the rocks where he had been hiding. Williams is down. Private Chen's panicked voice echoed through the comm system. They're everywhere. Jake could see the tactical situation falling apart. His squad was trapped in a killing field, surrounded by at least 30 Zelathi warriors. The aliens were closing in methodically, using their superior numbers to compress the human formation into an ever-shrinking circle. Standard military doctrine called for immediate evacuation, but there was nowhere to run. That was when Jake Morrison stopped being a regular Marine and became something the Zelathi Empire had never encountered before. Moving with fluid precision, Jake flanked the Eastern Assault Group. His combat knife found the throat of the first Zelathi before the creature even knew death was approaching. The second alien turned to raise an alarm, but Jake's sidearm put 3 rounds center mass before it could make a sound. He appropriated their plasma weapons, studying the alien technology with the quick adaptability that made humans such dangerous opponents. The Zelathi plasma rifle felt awkward in his hands, but Jake had always been a quick study. Within minutes, he was using their own weapons against them, targeting their command structure with surgical precision. The alien squad leaders fell one by one, their distinctive armor markings making them easy to identify through his rifle scope. Private Chen watched in amazement as Jake systematically dismantled the ambush force. The Marine moved like a ghost through the terrain, appearing behind enemy positions to deliver devastating attacks before vanishing again into the mist. The Zelathi, who had been so confident in their numerical superiority, began to show signs of confusion and fear. How is he doing that? Chen whispered into his comm, watching Jake take down 2 more aliens with a combination of precise rifle fire and brutal hand-to-hand combat. The answer was uniquely human. Where other species relied on technology or overwhelming numbers, humans had developed something far more dangerous: adaptability. Jake analyzed the Zelathi tactics in real time, identifying weaknesses and exploiting them with ruthless efficiency. He used the aliens' own overconfidence against them, turning their coordinated assault into a series of isolated firefights that favored his superior marksmanship and tactical awareness. By noon, 23 Zelathi bodies lay scattered across the rocky landscape. The surviving aliens had retreated, carrying tales of a human demon who killed with impossible skill. Jake's squad had been reduced to just 4 survivors, but they had inflicted devastating casualties on a force 3 times their size. As Jake knelt beside Sergeant Williams' body, he made a silent promise. The Zelathi Empire thought they understood human warfare, but they had never faced a Marine who refused to accept defeat. They had awakened something in Jake Morrison that would haunt their forces across multiple star systems. The war was about to change, and the aliens had no idea what was coming for them. Jake gathered intelligence from the alien corpses, studying their equipment and communication devices with the methodical approach that characterized human soldiers. Each piece of information was catalogued and analyzed, building a database of enemy capabilities that would prove invaluable in future encounters. The Zealoty had made a critical error in underestimating human capacity for learning and adaptation. Private Chen helped collect identification tags from their fallen comrades while Jake established a secure communication link with headquarters. The after-action report would make interesting reading for the intelligence analysts, but Jake was already thinking ahead to the next engagement. The Zealoty had shown their hand, revealing tactics and capabilities they probably thought were secret. As the surviving Marines prepared for extraction, Jake took one last look at the battlefield. The aliens had learned something today about human determination and skill, but the lesson was far from over. Word would spread through Zealoty command structures about the human who had turned their perfect ambush into a massacre. They would send more troops, better weapons, and improved tactics. Jake Morrison was counting on it. The extraction shuttle arrived as the planet's twin suns reached their zenith, casting harsh shadows across the blood-stained rocks. As they lifted off, Jake watched the landscape shrink below them, already planning his next move in a war that had suddenly become very personal. The Zealoty Empire controlled dozens of star systems and commanded millions of warriors, but they had never faced anything like the focused fury of a human marine with nothing left to lose. In the depths of space, alien commanders were already receiving reports of the failed ambush. They would analyze the data, adjust their tactics, and send even larger forces to deal with what they considered a minor problem. They could not comprehend that they had just created their own worst nightmare. Jake Morrison had tasted Zealoty blood, and he wanted more. 3 weeks after the ambush, Jake Morrison found himself assigned to Firebase Delta, a remote outpost protecting a civilian research station on the edge of human space. The base housed 30 Marines and nearly 200 scientists and their families who were studying the unique mineral deposits that made this planet valuable to both humans and Zealoty forces. Intelligence reports indicated increased alien activity in the sector, but no one expected what happened at 0347 hours on a Tuesday morning when the planet's early warning systems screamed their alert across the compound. Jake was in the command bunker reviewing patrol routes when the first wave hit. Through the reinforced windows, he could see the distinctive blue-white flashes of Zealoty drop pods impacting across the perimeter. The aliens had committed serious resources to this attack, deploying what appeared to be an entire battle group against a single outpost. "Sir, we've got massive contacts on all approaches," Private Rodriguez called out from the communications station, her voice tight with controlled fear. "Estimate 300 plus hostiles, with heavy weapons support." The base commander, Captain Torres, was a veteran of the Centauri campaigns and knew impossible odds when he saw them. "Begin evacuation protocols immediately. All civilians to the underground shelters. Marines to defensive positions." But Jake was already studying the tactical displays with the cold calculation that had kept him alive through dozens of engagements. The Zealoty were using a textbook assault formation, exactly the kind of predictable strategy that human adaptability could exploit. They expected the Marines to hunker down and fight a defensive battle until overwhelming numbers forced surrender or death. Jake Morrison had other plans. "Captain, request permission to take a fire team and conduct harassment operations against their command units," Jake said, his voice calm despite the chaos erupting outside. Torres looked at him like he had lost his mind. "Corporal, there are 300 aliens out there with heavy weapons. This isn't time for heroics." "Sir, respectfully, this is exactly the time for heroics. They're expecting us to sit here and get pounded. But if we can disrupt their command structure, create confusion in their ranks, we might buy enough time for the civilians to escape." The sound of plasma cannons impacting the outer perimeter walls made the decision urgent. Torres could see the tactical wisdom in Jake's proposal, even if the execution seemed suicidal. "Take volunteers only, Morrison. And, Corporal? Make them pay for every meter." Jake selected 3 Marines who had served with him in previous engagements: Corporal Kim, a demolitions expert with nerves of steel; Lance Corporal Washington, whose marksmanship rivaled Jake's own; and Private First Class Martinez, a communications specialist who could adapt alien technology faster than anyone Jake had ever seen. They slipped out through the maintenance tunnels as the first wave of Zealoty assault troops reached the outer walls. Jake's plan was simple in concept but devastating in execution: hit the aliens where they felt safe, disrupt their communications, and turn their own weapons against them. The Zealoty had established a command post on a ridge overlooking the base, exactly where human doctrine would have placed it. Jake's team reached the position just as the alien commanders were coordinating their second wave assault. The 4 Marines attacked with the precision of a surgical instrument and the fury of a hurricane. Jake's rifle found the Zealothy field commander first, the armor-piercing round punching through the alien's reinforced skull plate. Washington took down 2 communications officers before they could raise an alarm, while Kim's demolition charges turned their heavy weapons into twisted metal sculptures. Martinez captured their communication equipment intact, immediately beginning the process of intercepting alien radio traffic. But this was only the beginning. Using the captured communications gear, Jake began issuing false orders to Zealothy units across the battlefield. His knowledge of their tactical doctrine, gained through months of studying captured equipment and interrogating prisoners, allowed him to sow confusion throughout their ranks. Units received contradictory movement orders, artillery strikes were redirected away from human positions, and reserve forces were sent chasing phantom targets. The second wave assault fell apart as squads of aliens found themselves attacking empty positions while the real Marine defenses remained hidden. Jake had turned the aliens' own coordination against them, transforming their strength into weakness through pure human ingenuity. Jesus Christ, Morrison, what did you do to them? Captain Torres' voice crackled through the comm system as reports came in of Zealothy units firing on each other in confusion. Just giving them a taste of human tactics, sir, Jake replied as he moved his team to a new position. The aliens were already adapting to his interference, but he had bought precious time for the civilian evacuation. The third wave came with improved communication security and revised tactics. The Zealothy commanders had learned from their mistakes and deployed their forces in smaller, more independent units that could operate without constant coordination. It was exactly the response Jake had anticipated. As the alien assault troops advanced through the compound, they found themselves facing not a desperate defensive action but a methodical counterattack. Jake had positioned his Marines at key choke points, using the base's architecture to channel enemy movement into carefully prepared kill zones. Each engagement was brief and decisive, with the humans inflicting maximum casualties before withdrawing to the next prepared position. The Zealothy, accustomed to fighting enemies who relied on superior firepower or defensive positions, found themselves struggling against an opponent who refused to play by conventional rules. Jake's tactics were pure human warfare, adaptive, unpredictable, and utterly ruthless in execution. By dawn, the battlefield told a story that would be analyzed by military historians for decades to come. 300 Zealothy warriors had been reduced to fewer than 50 survivors, while the human defenders had lost only 6 Marines. The civilian evacuation had been completed successfully, and Firebase Delta remained in human hands. But the most significant casualty was Zealothy confidence. For the first time since the war began, alien commanders faced the reality that human soldiers were not just technologically inferior opponents to be overwhelmed with numbers. They were dealing with a species that could adapt, improvise, and overcome under impossible circumstances. Jake Morrison stood among the alien corpses scattered throughout the compound, mentally cataloging everything he had learned about enemy tactics and capabilities. Each engagement taught him something new about how the Zealothy fought, and, more importantly, how they could be beaten. The War Council of the Zealothy Empire would receive detailed reports of the Firebase Delta engagement, but they would struggle to understand what had really happened. How could a handful of human Marines inflict such devastating casualties on a superior force? How could one soldier disrupt the communications and coordination of an entire battle group? The answer lay in the fundamental difference between human and alien approaches to warfare. Where other species developed rigid tactical doctrines based on technology or numbers, humans had learned to make war itself into an art form. They could analyze, adapt, and overcome any opponent through sheer intellectual flexibility and determination. Jake had given the Zealothy Empire their first real glimpse of what humanity was capable of when pushed to the wall. The aliens had been fighting a species they thought they understood, but Firebase Delta proved they had barely scratched the surface of human potential. As medical teams treated the wounded and engineers began repairing the damaged installations, Jake was already planning ahead. The Zealothy would respond to this defeat with even larger forces and improved tactics. They would study human methods and develop countermeasures, adapting their strategies to deal with the unexpected threat that humanity represented. Jake Morrison was looking forward to teaching them that adaptation worked both ways, and humans had been perfecting the art of war for thousands of years before the Zealothy Empire even existed. The reports from Firebase Delta sent shockwaves through Zealothy High Command. War leader Thrixon, the Empire's most decorated tactical officer, found himself staring at casualty figures that defied everything the aliens understood about human military capabilities. 300 warriors reduced to 50 survivors by a handful of Marines led by a single human designated as Morrison, Jake, serial number 2847 Delta 9. "This is impossible," Thrickson hissed to his subordinates, his scaled hide shifting to the deep purple that indicated extreme agitation. "Our intelligence reports describe humans as technologically inferior with poor tactical coordination. These numbers suggest otherwise." Subcommander Vexhal, responsible for intelligence analysis, displayed the combat recordings on the central holographic projector. "War leader, the human designated Morrison appears to possess capabilities beyond normal parameters. He demonstrates superior marksmanship, tactical awareness, and, most concerning, the ability to adapt alien technology for his own use." What the Zealothi commanders didn't understand was that Jake Morrison had spent the weeks following Firebase Delta studying every piece of alien equipment he could acquire. Human intelligence officers were amazed at his ability to reverse engineer Zealothi weapons, communication systems, and tactical gear with nothing more than basic tools and an intimate knowledge of how things worked. Jake had requested assignment to deep reconnaissance missions, operating alone in territory controlled by alien forces. His official mission was intelligence gathering, but his personal agenda was far more direct. The Zealothi Empire had made the war personal when they killed his squad, and Jake intended to return the favor with interest. Operating from a concealed base camp in the mountainous region of Kepler 442b's northern continent, Jake had transformed himself into something the aliens had never encountered, a human hunter who used their own methods against them. He moved through their territory like a ghost, studying their patrol patterns, identifying their command structures, and learning how they communicated with their superiors. The first Zealothi patrol to encounter Jake after Firebase Delta was a reconnaissance unit of 12 warriors led by squad leader Korthax. They were investigating reports of human activity near their forward supply depot when Jake struck from concealment. The attack lasted less than 30 seconds. Jake used a captured Zealothi sniper rifle to eliminate the squad leader from 800 meters, then switched to a plasma carbine for the close-range engagement that followed. The aliens found themselves fighting an opponent who knew their tactics better than they did, who anticipated their movements and countered their standard responses with devastating efficiency. When the shooting stopped, 11 Zealothi warriors lay dead among the rocky terrain. Jake had captured the 12th alive for interrogation, using techniques learned during his intelligence training to extract information about enemy positions and planned operations. The captured alien would later describe the experience as being hunted by a demon that wore human skin. But Jake was just getting started. Over the following weeks, Zealothi patrols began disappearing throughout the northern sector. Command posts were attacked with surgical precision, communication relays were destroyed, and supply convoys simply vanished without sending distress signals. The aliens found themselves fighting a war against an opponent they couldn't see, couldn't track, and couldn't predict. Jake's methods were psychological warfare at its most effective. He left signs of his presence at each attack site, human military symbols carved into alien equipment, messages in perfect Zealothi script warning of more attacks to come, and, most disturbing, evidence that he was learning their language and customs with impossible speed. War leader Thrickson found himself obsessed with catching the human who had become known throughout Zealothi forces as the shadow that kills. He deployed his best hunters, equipped them with the Empire's most advanced tracking technology, and offered substantial rewards for Morrison's capture. Nothing worked. The problem was that Jake Morrison fought like no opponent the Zealothi had ever encountered. Where their other enemies relied on superior technology or overwhelming numbers, Jake used intelligence, adaptation, and pure human stubbornness. He studied each alien he killed, learning from their equipment and tactics, building an ever more detailed understanding of how the Empire functioned. After 6 weeks of increasingly successful raids, Jake had compiled enough intelligence to identify the location of Thrickson's primary command base. The facility was built into a natural cave system, protected by multiple defensive layers and garrisoned by over 200 elite warriors. Standard military doctrine would have labeled it impregnable to small unit assault. Jake Morrison decided to prove that human military doctrine was more flexible than alien understanding. The attack on Thrickson's command base began at midnight when the planet's twin moons were hidden by cloud cover. Jake had spent 2 weeks studying the facility's defenses, identifying patrol schedules, and mapping security vulnerabilities. He moved through the outer perimeter like smoke, eliminating sentries with silent efficiency and disabling alarm systems with techniques that combined human engineering knowledge with captured alien technology. The real genius of Jake's assault was not its stealth but its timing. He had intercepted communications indicating that Thrixon was conducting a strategic planning session with his senior commanders, bringing together the Empire's best tactical minds in a single location. Jake intended to decapitate the entire regional command structure in one devastating blow. Using captured access codes and forged identification, Jake penetrated the command center just as the alien officers were reviewing plans for a massive offensive against human colonies. The conference room contained 8 of the Zealothi Empire's most experienced commanders, discussing strategies that would determine the course of the war. Jake's assault rifle held 30 rounds, and he made each one count. The first burst caught Thrixon center mass, the armor-piercing rounds punching through the war leader's reinforced battle armor like paper. Jake's tactical training took over, identifying targets by their insignia and eliminating them in order of importance. The alien commanders, accustomed to directing battles from secure positions, had no experience fighting for their lives at close quarters. Within minutes, the entire regional command structure of the Zealothi Empire had been destroyed by a single human marine armed with superior training and an intimate knowledge of alien weaknesses. Jake gathered every piece of intelligence he could carry, including strategic plans, communication codes, and detailed information about Empire military capabilities. The escape was almost anticlimactic. Jake simply walked out through the front entrance, using captured commander credentials to pass security checkpoints while the facility's defenders searched for infiltrators in all the wrong places. By the time the aliens discovered the massacre in their command center, Jake Morrison was already miles away, planning his next strike. The aftermath of the command base raid sent the Zealothi Empire into complete organizational chaos. Without their senior commanders, regional forces found themselves unable to coordinate operations or respond effectively to human counterattacks. Entire sectors fell to marine advances as alien defenders waited for orders that would never come. But the psychological impact was even more devastating than the tactical victory. For the first time since the war began, Zealothi warriors faced the terrifying reality that humans were not just another species to be conquered. They were dealing with an enemy that could think, adapt, and strike with precision that bordered on the supernatural. Jake Morrison had become more than just a soldier, he had become the living embodiment of human warfare at its most effective. Every Zealothi commander in the sector now knew his name, his methods, and his seemingly impossible ability to turn their own strengths against them. The war was entering a new phase, and the aliens were beginning to understand that they had gravely underestimated the species they were trying to conquer. Jake Morrison was just one human marine, but he represented something far more dangerous than superior technology or numerical advantage. He represented the human capacity for war itself. The emergency session of the Zealothi War Council convened aboard the Empire's flagship Sovereign's Wrath, a massive dreadnought that served as mobile headquarters for military operations in human space. Fleet Admiral Kexvar, Supreme Commander of Zealothi forces, found himself facing a crisis that threatened the entire war effort. "Explain to me," Kexvar's voice carried the dangerous calm of a predator preparing to strike, "how a single human soldier has managed to neutralize 3 command centers, eliminate 47 officers, and disrupt operations across 4 star systems." The assembled commanders shifted uncomfortably in their seats. War leader Vashtog, recently promoted after Thrixon's death, cleared his throat nervously. "Fleet Admiral, this Morrison appears to be an exceptional individual. Our intelligence suggests he has received specialized training beyond standard human military protocols." Specialized training? Kexvar's hide darkened to the deep crimson that indicated barely controlled rage. "We are the Zealothi Empire. We have conquered 17 species across 43 systems. Are you telling me that we cannot handle one human with specialized training?" The truth was more complex and far more disturbing than anyone in the War Council wanted to admit. Jake Morrison had become something unique in the galaxy, a perfect fusion of human adaptability, military training, and personal motivation that created an opponent unlike anything the Zealothi had ever encountered. After destroying Thrixon's command structure, Jake had spent months operating deep behind enemy lines, living off captured supplies and using stolen alien technology to wage a one-man war against the Empire's occupation forces. He had learned to think like the Zealothi, understanding their psychology and tactical preferences well enough to predict their responses to any given situation. More importantly, Jake had discovered something that would change the course of the entire war. During his raids on Zealothi facilities, he had uncovered intelligence about a massive operation called Final Solution, the Empire's plan to use biological weapons for the complete extermination of human colonies. The operation was scheduled to launch from a heavily fortified base on Rigel 7, protected by the largest concentration of alien forces outside their home system. Jake Morrison decided that the Empire's final solution would become their final mistake. The intelligence he had gathered revealed that the biological weapon was stored in a research facility protected by over 3,000 Zelethi warriors, orbital defense platforms, and experimental weapon systems designed to test new technologies for the war effort. Standard military assessment classified the target as impossible for anything short of a full fleet assault. But Jake Morrison had stopped thinking in terms of standard military assessments months ago. His plan was audacious even by human standards. Instead of attempting a frontal assault or trying to destroy the facility, Jake intended to turn the Empire's own biological weapon against their forces. He had studied the alien research data carefully, identifying weaknesses in their defensive protocols and discovering that the weapon's delivery system could be modified to target Zelethi physiology instead of human biology. The infiltration of Rigel 7 took 3 weeks of careful preparation. Jake had to cross multiple security zones, each one defended by increasingly sophisticated detection systems and elite guard units. He moved through the facility's defensive layers like water flowing around stones, adapting to each new challenge with the fluid intelligence that made humans such dangerous opponents. The biological research facility was built into an asteroid complex, its laboratories protected by multiple redundant security systems and staffed by the Empire's most brilliant scientists. Jake had to neutralize security teams, avoid detection by scanning systems, and navigate through areas where a single mistake would trigger facility-wide alarms. But Jake Morrison had learned something during his months of warfare that the Zelethi still didn't understand: humans could adapt to any environment, any challenge, any opponent. Where aliens relied on predetermined responses and rigid protocols, humans could improvise solutions on the fly, turning obstacles into advantages through pure creative thinking. The modifications to the biological weapon took Jake 6 hours of careful work in the facility's main laboratory. Using knowledge gained from captured alien scientists and his own understanding of biochemistry, he reprogrammed the delivery systems to target Zelethi genetic markers instead of human DNA. The Empire's ultimate weapon became a sword pointed at their own throat. But the real masterpiece was Jake's escape plan. Instead of trying to fight his way out through thousands of alien guards, he activated the facility's emergency protocols while simultaneously releasing the modified biological agent into the base's air circulation system. The Zelethi found themselves sealed in their own facility while their ultimate weapon turned against them. The results exceeded Jake's most optimistic projections. Within hours, the entire garrison of Rigel 7 was dead or dying, victims of their own biological research. The facility's communication systems automatically sent status reports to Fleet Command, informing them that the final solution had been successfully tested and was ready for deployment. What the Zelethi commanders didn't realize was that Jake Morrison had gained access to their most secure communication networks. He now knew the locations of every major Empire facility, the deployment schedules for their fleets, and, most importantly, the specific genetic markers that the modified biological weapon would target. Using captured Zelethi ships and forged authorization codes, Jake began a campaign of systematic destruction that brought the Empire's war effort to its knees. He deployed the biological weapon against military targets throughout human space, turning the aliens' own ultimate weapon into the instrument of their defeat. The psychological impact on Zelethi forces was devastating. Their soldiers found themselves fighting an enemy who seemed to anticipate their every move, who could turn their own weapons against them, and who struck at targets they thought were impossible to reach. Morale collapsed as reports spread of bases being destroyed by their own biological weapons, operated by a single human who seemed to understand their technology better than their own scientists. Fleet Admiral Kexmar found himself commanding an empire in retreat. System after system fell to human counterattacks as Zelethi forces struggled to understand how their unbeatable war machine had been turned into a liability. The alien who had been confident of easy victory over a technologically inferior species now faced the reality that humans represented something far more dangerous than advanced weapons. Jake Morrison had proven that humans were the ultimate adaptive species, capable of learning any enemy's methods and using them with devastating efficiency. He had taken the Empire's greatest strength, their biological weapons, and transformed it into their greatest weakness. But Jake wasn't finished. The intelligence he had gathered from Rigel 7 included the locations of the Empire's primary shipyards, their main military academies, and, most significantly, the coordinates of their home system. The Zelethi Empire had brought total war to humanity, and Jake Morrison intended to return the favor. As Zelethi commanders struggled to understand how their perfect plan had been turned against them, Jake was already preparing for the final phase of his personal war against the Empire. He had learned everything there was to know about alien tactics, technology, and psychology. Now it was time to teach them the most important lesson about human warfare. When humans fought for survival, they didn't just win battles. They destroyed entire empires. The War Council aboard Sovereign's Wrath continued to debate strategies and analyze intelligence reports, but they were already fighting the last war. Jake Morrison had fundamentally changed the nature of the conflict, transforming it from a conventional military campaign into something the Zelathi Empire was completely unprepared to handle. They thought they were conquering a primitive species with inferior technology. Instead, they had awakened a nightmare that would haunt their civilization for generations to come. The name Morrison was becoming legend among Zelathi forces, a whispered warning about the human capacity for war that transcended anything the Empire had encountered in centuries of conquest. Jake Morrison had become more than just a soldier. He had become the living embodiment of human determination, adaptability, and the refusal to accept defeat under any circumstances. The war was far from over, but the outcome was no longer in doubt. The Grand War Council of the Zelathi Empire convened in the deepest chambers of their home system's command citadel, a massive structure that had overseen the conquest of dozens of worlds over 3 centuries of expansion. The assembled beings represented the pinnacle of alien military thought: Supreme War Leader Zethran, whose tactical genius had crushed the rebellion of the Korthani Republic; Fleet Admiral Yexthal, architect of the Siege of Procyon; and war philosopher Mikresh, whose theoretical frameworks had guided Empire strategy for over 50 years. They had gathered to examine what intelligence analysts were calling the Morrison phenomenon, the systematic destruction of Zelathi forces by a single human soldier whose kill count had reached numbers that defied rational analysis. "Begin the presentation," Zethran commanded, his ancient voice carrying the authority of countless victories. The holographic display activated, showing tactical maps of human space marked with red zones indicating Zelathi defeats. Sub-Commander Vexhal, the Empire's chief intelligence analyst, began reading from reports that had been arriving daily for the past 8 months. Morrison, Jake. Serial designation 2847 Delta 9. Human male, age 26 standard years. Service record indicates specialized infantry training with additional qualifications in demolitions, communications, and field intelligence operations. The assembled commanders studied the holographic projection of Jake's military photograph, seeing nothing that would indicate the supernatural abilities attributed to this human. Initial contact occurred during Patrol Action Kefvar 7, when Morrison's unit was ambushed by Assault Group Trixon. Morrison eliminated 23 warriors and escaped with tactical intelligence that enabled subsequent human counterattacks. War philosopher Mikresh leaned forward in his chair, his compound eyes reflecting deep concern. 23 warriors? In a single engagement? What weapons did he use? Standard human projectile rifles, captured plasma weapons, and improvised explosives created from alien technology. Intelligence suggests Morrison adapted our equipment for his own use during the engagement. The room fell silent as the implications sank in. The Zelathi Empire had conquered dozens of species, but none had ever demonstrated the ability to successfully operate captured alien technology in combat situations. Their weapons were designed with biological safeguards that should have made them useless to other species. "Continue the briefing," Zethran ordered, though his tone had shifted from confidence to something approaching unease. Firebase Delta engagement. Morrison led 4 Marines in defense against Assault Group Krixtal, comprising 300 warriors with heavy weapon support. Result: 47 Zelathi casualties, successful defense of human position, complete withdrawal of attacking forces. Fleet Admiral Yexthal's hide shifted to the deep blue of disbelief. Impossible. 300 warriors with heavy weapon support should have overwhelmed any human defensive position. Vexhal activated detailed combat recordings captured by Zelathi helmet cameras during the engagement. The assembled commanders watched in stunned silence as Jake Morrison demonstrated tactical abilities that seemed to transcend normal human limitations. He moved through the battlefield with fluid precision, anticipating enemy movements and countering standard Zelathi tactics with devastating effectiveness. Analysis indicates Morrison possesses comprehensive knowledge of Empire tactical doctrine, communication protocols, and equipment specifications. His countermeasures suggest detailed study of Zelathi military operations. How did he acquire this knowledge? Mikresh demanded, his voice tight with concern. Unknown, war philosopher. Morrison appears to learn enemy capabilities through direct combat experience and analysis of captured equipment. His adaptation rate exceeds anything in our xenobiological databases. The briefing continued with increasingly impossible statistics. Jake Morrison's solo operations behind enemy lines had resulted in the destruction of 17 command posts, the elimination of 63 officers, and the capture of classified intelligence that had enabled devastating human counterattacks across multiple sectors. Thrixon base assault, Vexal continued, his voice becoming subdued. Morrison infiltrated a Class 5 military installation defended by 200 elite warriors. Result: complete command structure eliminated, including war leader Thrixon and 7 senior commanders. Morrison escaped without casualties. The silence in the chamber was absolute. Thrixon had been one of the Empire's most capable commanders, and his base had been considered impregnable. The idea that a single human soldier had walked into their most secure facility and killed their best officers seemed like something from a nightmare. But the worst was yet to come. Rigel 7 operation, Vexal said, his voice barely above a whisper. Morrison infiltrated the biological research facility, modified Project Final Solution to target Zealothy physiology, and deployed the weapon against our own forces. Current casualty estimates exceed 12,000 warriors across 47 installations. Supreme War Leader Zethran rose from his chair, his massive form trembling with rage. You are telling me that one human soldier turned our ultimate weapon against us? That he understood our biological research better than our own scientists? Analysis suggests Morrison possesses exceptional intelligence and adaptability, combined with detailed knowledge of biochemistry and weapons systems. He appears to view our technology as tools to be understood and improved rather than alien systems beyond comprehension. War philosopher Mikresh activated his personal data interface, accessing theoretical frameworks developed over decades of study. This Morrison represents something we have never encountered before. Most species we conquer fight according to rigid patterns based on their evolutionary development. They use predetermined tactics and rely on technological advantages or numerical superiority. The ancient philosopher's analysis sent chills through the assembled commanders. Morrison fights like no species we have ever faced. He adapts our own methods against us, learns our technology faster than our own recruits, and demonstrates tactical flexibility that exceeds our best computer simulations. Fleet Admiral Yexthal was studying the casualty reports with the methodical approach of a career military officer. Current statistics indicate Morrison has personally eliminated over 800 Zealothy warriors in direct combat, with additional thousands killed through his sabotage operations and biological weapon deployment. The numbers were staggering. In less than 2 years of warfare, a single human soldier had inflicted casualties on the Zealothy Empire that exceeded entire planetary campaigns. His kill count surpassed legendary warriors from Empire history, and he was still actively hunting Zealothy forces throughout human space. What are the strategic implications? Zethran demanded, though he dreaded the answer. Mikresh consulted his analysis frameworks before responding. If Morrison represents typical human military potential, then our invasion of human space was the greatest strategic error in Empire history. If he is exceptional among his species, then humans possess the capacity to produce warriors who can single-handedly challenge our military supremacy. The implications were terrifying for an empire that had built its power on the assumption of military superiority. The Zealothy had conquered dozens of worlds by overwhelming less advanced species with superior technology and tactical coordination. Jake Morrison had proven that humans could not only match alien capabilities but exceed them through pure adaptability and learning speed. Current intelligence suggests Morrison has gained access to our most secure communication networks and may possess detailed information about Empire military deployments, strategic objectives, and technological capabilities, Vexal added, driving home the scope of the intelligence disaster. Supreme War Leader Zethran looked around the chamber at his fellow commanders, seeing the same realization reflected in their expressions. The Zealothy Empire faced something unprecedented in its history, an enemy who could learn their methods, adapt their technology, and use their own strengths against them. Recommendations? He asked, though the question felt hollow. Immediate withdrawal from human space, Mikresh replied without hesitation. Request for negotiated settlement before Morrison's methods can be studied and replicated by other human soldiers. Analysis suggests prolonged warfare against this species represents an existential threat to the Empire. The greatest military minds of the Zealothy Empire sat in stunned silence, contemplating the reality that their centuries of conquest had ended with a single human marine who refused to accept defeat. Jake Morrison had become more than just a soldier, he had become the instrument of their empire's humiliation. As the War Council debated their response to this unprecedented threat, Jake Morrison was already planning his next operation against Zealothi forces, unaware that his personal war against the aliens had fundamentally altered the balance of power in the galaxy. The kill count of a single Earth Marine had indeed stunned the War Council, forcing them to confront the terrifying reality that humans represented something far more dangerous than they had ever imagined.